Edition on YouTube at Clippers Podcast, on Twitter at Clippers Pod. I'm at a Mosland. I think this is working right now, but I'm going to check Twitter myself to confirm that we are in fact live and maybe even give it a retweet at Clippers Pod. And it does seem to be working. If anyone is out there and wants to let me know if my microphone is also working, because I'm not currently seeing the chat log, maybe that's because nobody said anything yet, but I'm getting a little bit of assistance here from Chuck Mockler and Will Updike. Oh, just expand the chat window like we're on a normal stream, because that's what I typically do on a normal stream. Don't really understand exactly what he's saying there. But yes, a monumental day for Clipper Nation, and hopefully Chuck or will let me know here if they can hear me, if we are in fact live, or if I'm just talking into the void, right? Christian Slater and pump up the volume or something like that. So the news came out a few hours ago. I was actually woken up to this by Timmy Cates on AM 570 LA Sports that the Clippers came to an agreement, a contract extension with Kawhi Leonard. We got the terms of that contract eventually from Shams Charania. 3-year extension, $152 million, and it sounds like he left $8.5 million on the table. So that gives the Clippers a better opportunity that if they're going all in with the big three, like many people expect them to at this point, that it will be something that's attainable going into the Intuit Dome with not just Kawhi Leonard, but according to Adrian Wojnarowski, it looks like it's a possibility for Paul George to sign that extension. And then obviously next summer is when James Harden would become a free agent. He is not extension eligible. I wonder if I watch this on the YouTube side, I could actually see what the hell people are saying to me. Would that make a little bit more sense? You know, William Updike likes to give me a lot of crap on being the oldest member of this show. And the YouTube is a little bit behind. Money Motivated says, sounds good. So we're up and running as I'm getting ready. If you can't tell, getting a little bit dolled up. Got the hair, got the beard trimmed. Going to be at crypto.com arena later tonight for the Clippers taking on a furious Toronto Raptors team. More on that a little bit here, but want to focus in on the contract extension for Kawhi Leonard. The Claw will be with the Clippers at least through the 26-27 season. I said this when he agreed to come to the Clippers in the summer of 2019, when that earthquake hit. But for the first time in franchise history, the Clippers became a destination franchise. Kawhi choosing them out of all the options he had, including the other team in LA, it was more than just signing a superstar, a top 75 player ever, and the guy who just won Finals MVP for the Toronto Raptors. It was about the Clippers transforming into a destination franchise. And that is because of Steve Ballmer. That has been the difference for this team, to say the least. They went from having, you could argue, the worst owner in sports. I don't even think it's arguable, to having the best in sports. A guy willing to do whatever it takes to win. And that means delegating and putting the front office in a position to succeed. With a coaching staff, with Tyronn Lue now, and the right player and roster construction to make this all happen. But this is the second contract extension now Kawhi Leonard has signed as a Clipper. I believe the first one was after the 2021 season. And I know some people will deride this and mock it and say, how many games is he going to play? Well, he played 27 straight to start off this year, then missed 4, then has come back, I believe, for the last 4 games now, and was phenomenal in their huge victory, 27-point victory over the Phoenix Suns Monday night, where he had 4 of his 5 steals in that fourth quarter, and I thought just completely controlled the game in the second half with his defense also on Kevin Durant. But if you look at this franchise and what they've been able to do since Steve Ballmer took over in 2014, it almost feels like that they've only been around for a decade. The Clippers, you know now, what they're able to accomplish now. And they're still looking for the biggest goal, of course, winning that championship that has been so evasive and been evading them. But it feels like, and I remember Doc Rivers said this at the introductory press conference at the high school gym with Kawhi and Paul George that day, it felt like a movement with what was happening with this organization. And you can tell that it's coming. Intuit Dome next year. And we're hoping to see, of course, Paul George and James Harden still around. 4 guys now from SoCal trying to make this thing happen. The California crew, whatever you want to call them, SoCal 4, California Love. I know there's been a lot of nicknames out there. Dime Dropper, my guy from Locked On, is in the chat here. We got Darren A, Steve Rodriguez, legend. Is that Kawhi Leonard himself, maybe? No, not the type. Obviously, hasn't been on the internet, I think, since he posted, was it an advertisement on his Twitter account for the grasshopper little wannabe hoverboard thing that was out there for years. I think that fad has ended. But I'm so proud of this Clippers team getting this done in the manner they did, where if you look at it, is this. I'm getting the update from Chuck Mockler here that it's using the old name tag. No, it says Clippers signed Kawhi Leonard to extension. But beneath that, there's a different description. I can fix that, I think, eventually. But you're listening to Adam Moslin here and hopefully watching on the YouTube stream, because that's really the only way you can do this at this point. Hopefully Chuck or will podcast this maybe a little bit later, because I got to run over to the game. Clippers taking on the Toronto Raptors tonight. It's good to be with you guys on the live. I like it live, Bill O'Reilly style. Charles Mockler's in the chat now, still waiting on my Kawhi hoverboard. It's going to take some time. Maybe he can at least get his own version of those shoes from Back to the Future too. I know they eventually put them out for Nike. Kawhi Leonard, a New Balance guy like I am, before it was cool when they signed Kawhi Leonard to that contract. But the Clippers today with a 3-year extension on Kawhi, which means, before the season started, there were a lot of people who were saying they should blow it up. The 2-1-3 era is over. Now they're doubling down and now tripling down and committing to trying to win a championship for the first time in franchise history. That's what signing Kawhi Leonard does for you. We're not just talking about a signing where a guy is past his prime and you just want to keep the illusion of being a competitive team out there. Kawhi Leonard, once again, now off the meniscus injury, his second year back off the ACL, has put together those 14 straight games, the best regular season stretch of his career, shooting 60% from the field, 53% from the outside, and damn near 90% at the free throw line. We saw it last year. If you go back to January 7th on, I think it was about the last 33 games of last season, where he put up those ridiculous 57, 43, 90 shooting splits. He's still getting better. The shot's getting better, because Dimes in the chat, we're seeing the burst come around from Kawhi Leonard this season, him blowing past guys. We saw it especially down the stretch in that fourth quarter against the Dallas Mavericks, when Kawhi Leonard turned the corner on Grant Williams with that spin move into the Euro step that got the Clippers off the bench, and then the Derrick Jones Jr. blow by. Maybe there's still some lingering effects from the hip injury because he was already playing through it. That was something we learned. He had played through it after it occurred originally in the 41-point game he had against the Utah Jazz in Utah, played 6 more games, re-aggravated against the Dallas Mavericks, and perhaps he's still working through it, but I believe he had 30 in the game in Phoenix recently. So if you want to say his scoring is down the last couple of games, last 3, he hasn't scored more than 19, fine. But the defense in the second half, especially on Kevin Durant, and then in that fourth quarter when the Clippers blew the doors off, the athleticism, the pop was there from Kawhi Leonard. And this is why the Clippers believe in him being your number one option to win a championship with. We've already seen it happen multiple times. You could say with that San Antonio Spurs team, there were a few different guys, and Tim Duncan at the very end there was jockeying for position of being the number one guy. But Kawhi Leonard obviously played the best in the NBA Finals that year for them with his defense on LeBron. And then I think he shot 55% from the field and averaged 22 points per game as they dismantled the Miami Heat. But then you go back to what he did in 2019, where he was playing through some type of knee injury during that run with the Toronto Raptors, didn't miss a game, was able to play through it, was the number one option on a team that took down the Golden State Warriors. I know they had some injuries there, but the belief is when you have Kawhi Leonard in a 7-game series, you not only have one of the best players in the NBA today, but one of the ceiling raisers in the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard peaks at the right time. Now, it typically happens in the regular season around January, you could say. His legs get underneath him. He kind of eases his way into the season. But then in the playoffs, it's just different. What he did in the first 2 games against the Phoenix Suns in Game 2 on the torn meniscus, the rip away from Kevin Durant, the throwdown on the other end. I think the Clippers were winning that series if Kawhi Leonard was just healthy. Regardless of it, if Paul George came back, he was the best player on the floor. And there seems to almost be an intimidation factor or just a physicality, a different level with him against Kevin Durant, where he's been getting the best of him. I know Devin Booker, and now they have Bradley Beal, but most Clippers fans feel like they match up pretty damn well against that Phoenix Suns crew. But when you have Kawhi, you have a chance. And what the Clippers did today is commit to trying to win a championship, not just this season, but this 2-1-3 era looks to be extending. If what Adrian Wojnarowski reported earlier is true, they're still working on a deal with Paul George. Hopefully that comes along. And then somebody asked me earlier today, and I spoke about it earlier too on this YouTube Live, James Harden is not extension eligible. He will be a free agent. So that will have to come later on. Chunk Sampson says here on the live, my new stadium season ticket value just went up. Stonks. Up and to the right. You can't open Intuit Dome in LA, my man, in LA. You can't open a brand new stadium without having that star power. Now, I think this is much more about competing for a championship too, but it's meaningful to have somebody like Kawhi Leonard and hopefully somebody like Paul George also be with this team for an extended period of time where they have a chance to retire as Clippers and do so with opening up what I've called the 8th or 9th wonder of the world in the Intuit Dome. It's basically going to be the best place in the world to watch a basketball game. Be excited about that. Steve Rodriguez, I think this sets the tone for PG to take less than the max too. Kawhi Leonard did it, leading by example, once again, off the court in this way. But wouldn't be shocked by that. Somebody tweeted at me at Follow Adam A or posted at me on X earlier about that. Are the other guys going to take less to stick around? Well, Kawhi Leonard did. So now we'll see what happens with Paul George. And then this summer with James Harden. Still a lot of work to be done for this team. Yes, they've won 20 of 26, 6 of 7, 15 of 18 since December 1st. The goal is to win a championship this year. And they are trending in the right direction. And when Kawhi Leonard came out post-game, it was Tomer Azarli from Clutch Points who asked him this. This was about 3 weeks ago now when he was in the midst of that run, just putting up ridiculous, stupid efficiency numbers each and every night, where he was on his own 12-game winning streak. When he was out there for the Clippers, they had won 12 straight until that Lakers game. And Kawhi again at 60%, 53 from the outside during that 14-game stretch. One of the greatest in NBA history, not just him, if you look at the overall historic numbers there. But he was asked about the stretch he was having by Tomer. And he asked him specifically, is this the best stretch of your career in the regular season? Kawhi said something to the effect of, if you want to put it in numbers, but I'm focused on something much bigger than just a stretch. I don't think that was in reference to getting a contract extension. I think that was inevitable. That's in reference to bringing this team their first championship. That's what you have to get excited about. Chunk Sampson says, good question. I was wondering the same about PG. What do you think happens, Adam? Personally, I think PG easier to replace than Harden, but I'm biased. Clearly. Paul George is younger by a year, and I know there's been a lot of conversation of who's the number 2 now on this team, and you can make the argument for both guys because of what Paul George does defensively, what James Harden does with controlling the basketball out there. But the thing about Paul George is he fits in and blends in so seamlessly because he can turn into a catch-and-shoot guy at times. where he doesn't need to ISO. He can be quick trigger, quick strike Paul George out there. And you're seeing it much more now with James Harden. Said it day one on October 31st, when I believe the trade deal was finally reached. He was going to unlock the best version of 2-1-3. You look at the numbers over the last 26 games since the new starting lineup with Russ coming off the bench and sacrificing like that. Yeah, they're playing the best basketball in the 2-1-3 era in the regular season. They're also, I would argue, playing the best basketball in franchise history in the regular season. Been saying this a bit, but the 17-game straight, as special as that was in 2012, 2013 for the Clippers, they loaded up on some cream puffs, some teams that were down. I'm not saying it wasn't still great, but if you want to compare them head to head, and 17 straight victories, still impressive as hell. But I think what the Clippers are doing right now with the type of wins they're getting, the level of dominance, the way they're able to impose their will out there, winning by 27 over the Phoenix Suns with their big three, both teams on a back-to-back, even playing field, and the Clippers blow them out and shoot 62% from the field after having their worst shooting night at 39% since the game against the Lakers the night before, since at least November 8th at least, shooting under 40%, since they really started clicking with 2-on-3 next to James Harden. So this team is surging. They're playing great. The eye test, the numbers all line up. And the way James Harden can bring out the best in guys next to him, not just 2-1-3, but now Ivica Zubac. So they didn't just get James Harden. They upgraded the center position because of James Harden, because Ivica Zubac is coming into his own. He is a made man. He is a guy now that is being relied upon, not just for his rim protection, but his offense. They're going to him. They're finding him. I think they should give him even more touches. I have been a big proponent of this for years. They haven't exploited him enough in a good way. He's such a positive on offense. I heard this earlier from Shane Young, who was on the Sports Ethos podcast with my guy Brandon Marcus. In 43 post-ups, that's the amount he has gotten so far this season. Ivica Zubac is shooting 65% on those plays. Only Kristaps Porzingis has had a better percentage on post-ups. Now, the volume isn't high enough. The sample size isn't, just 43. But you're seeing a feathery touch from Ivica Zubac around the rim. And I think he's always had this to a degree. I joked a few years back that he's the long-lost Gasol brother. When he has these games where he goes for 30 straight up, I think it was 34 against Nikola Jokic in Denver. He had 40. Clippers would lose that game, but Big Zoo more than held his own. When he has almost a 30-30 game, you see these glimpses of what he can do. But he said post-game after the victory over the Suns, and it's easy when you have guys that are rewarding you for what you do on the defensive end with Russ and with James Harden. Harden has made the game infinitely more easy for everyone out there. I don't think it's a coincidence that Norman Powell has been on this heater like he has, about 60% in fourth quarters, over 50% from 3 and fourth quarters. Just instant offense. Some of that is mentality. If you read the article with Andrew Greif, it's about a mindset there where he's not trying to be an all-star. He's just trying to star in his role now. But again, it all goes back to Kawhi Leonard, who now today signs that 3-year extension. So turns down the option for next year, and he'll be on that extension starting in the 24-25 season through 26-27. He'll be at the age of 35 that year. The good news about Kawhi Leonard to me is if he can stay healthy, and I know there's going to be some eye rolls there, if he can stay healthy. And he has said recently, if you read the article by Ohm on ESPN, that, this is some of the best he has felt, basically, that he was dealing with knee injuries going back to 2017 with the San Antonio Spurs. So before the Zaza Pachulia play, his trainer said he had issues going back to 2014 in that run with the San Antonio Spurs. But he has felt healthy. He's been going on back-to-backs. And not just going, playing great on the second night of a back-to-back. The Lakers game where he had 38. and then the game against the Suns on Monday. There are a lot of encouraging signs with his health currently. Knock on wood. Yes, I understand that part of it. But if you just look at his game when he's able to go out there on the court, it can age gracefully. Kawhi doesn't do damage because he's the most explosive guy out there, the best athlete out there. I've always called him MJ96, second three-peat MJ with his movement. And even Michael, a better overall athlete, of course, in his prime earlier on. But he aged gracefully. He ended his run with the Bulls at 35 because he can get to his spots, unguardable plays in the mid-range, the bag that he has, the pump fakes, the head fakes, the old man type of game that Kawhi Leonard has always possessed. That's not going anywhere. The high basketball IQ, that stuff only gets better and more refined with time. And the burst as of late has looked to be there even more. Oh, we got people arguing about Daniel Tice in the comment section here. Small ball 5. He's only 6'8". Hey, look, if you listen to me recently, I think it should be more matchup dependent moving forward with him and Mason Plumlee. But they can ease Mason Plumlee back in and ramp him up as he was gone for 2 months, and that timing and rhythm still needs to get there first. Daniel Tice has been amazing, though. Can't say enough about the Clippers organization, what this day means to them, and what it means for Kawhi Leonard. Congrats to him, too. To be able to, I don't think he gets enough credit for his work ethic. As I mentioned, this isn't someone who was born as the most talented offensive player. He came into the league as somebody that was a defensive specialist. He continues to have this maniacal work ethic to get better and better. And you can see it. And even when he comes off injuries, when you think he's going to slow down, he just becomes a more efficient player out there. He's the only guy I've seen really in NBA history that has had major injuries and seems to come back better each and every time. That's what's incredible. But it speaks to the work ethic. I remember Patrick Beverley a couple seasons ago. I think this was during the COVID lockout. He said he went to work out with Kawhi Leonard. And Pat Bev, have you seen him on the beach with the boots on, the Uggs? He goes through some difficult workouts. Still love Patrick Beverley. All-time favorite forever for me. But he said working out with Kawhi gave him a better appreciation for what Kawhi does and how he's gotten to this place in his career where he turned into an easy 25-point-a-game type scorer. And it also motivated him to work harder. He thought he was at the highest level with his work ethic. Then he worked next to Kawhi Leonard. Then he practiced with him. It's not talked about enough. The way he's been able to come back so quickly off the meniscus, yeah, some of that's luck and the body responding, but it's also Kawhi Leonard on the grind and chasing perfection out there. That's what it looks like. A game that's so refined, and he has talked about studying Michael Jordan and, of course, worked with Kobe Bryant, that I do think it's going to age gracefully as long as he can put some of that injury history with that right leg behind him. And all the signs, just like with the Clippers right now, are trending in the right direction there. And what's interesting about Kawhi and his athleticism, I've talked about this at times, but he's a left foot leaper. The injuries have happened to his right leg with the quadriceps, the knee. So he can still get up. That's not an issue. It has been recently. I was hoping Jakob Poeltl would be able to go for the Toronto Raptors tonight because last season, Kawhi, I thought, had his best dunk on him. And maybe a little something extra since he was one of the guys included in the trade with San Antonio getting him, and now he's a Toronto Raptor. But big day, Clipper Nation. Celebrate it. Enjoy it. The grind continues. We move. The Clippers need a victory tonight against a furious Toronto Raptors team. And if you want my opinion of what happened in that fourth quarter against the Los Angeles Lakers last night, where they got 23 free throws to just 2 for Toronto, I was texting a buddy during it. I was texting Clips and Dip. I was texting Chuck and Will. I thought they were getting an awful whistle. I agreed with Darko postgame. I know some of the fouls were intentional late. You can throw that stuff out, and they still at least had an advantage of 13-2 in the free throw category. So I don't mind anybody speaking out post-game when it feels like you get jobbed like that in a game you lose by 1. What it means for the Clippers tonight, they're going to be taking on a fiery Toronto Raptors team. A team that maybe gets a few calls against them. Clippers have to play through that. Can't worry about that part of it. Can't let that be a factor. Because the Toronto Raptors, while they're on the second night of a back-to-back, they're still a young ball club. And when you look at some of those calls, the flagrant on Emmanuel Quickly, where I think it was Ben Taylor who made the call, who has a history against the Toronto Raptors, going back to Fred VanVleet, going after him in a post-game presser. He called it, a natural horizontal movement with the elbow, hitting Cam Reddish in the chops. I just had never heard that before. It was kind of wild. The Lakers broadcast thought it was a bad call. They thought Scotty Barnes should have got an and one on that dunk on Max Christie. And then there were 2 late calls, blatantly late, a second and a half late, once on Anthony Davis, once on Austin Reeves. And a couple more calls where it looked like Scotty Barnes and I think Pascal Siakam were going towards the rim and not getting rewarded, even though they drew contact. And then, of course, the moving screen that was eventually called where Anthony Davis definitely flopped. Yeah, it was a moving screen. That doesn't always get called, especially late in a game like that tight. I think the Golden State Warriors have gotten away with a lot of those for years and built a dynasty off doing some of that stuff. They earned it all. I'm just saying it's an unusual call that late. So if you're wondering why the Toronto Raptors are upset, they got a reason to be, rightfully so. They may get a whistle tonight. Clippers got to play through it, not worry about that. Toronto, 4th best offense over the last 5 games since the trade to bring in Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett. They're leaning into offense. We talked about it yesterday on C&D. They just haven't had enough firepower in that area. Defensively, ton of switchability still. It's a chance for Big Zoo to detonate. We saw Anthony Davis get 41 against them. They're undersized. Going to be a fun one. But if you're there at Crypto, come by Section 111 and celebrate Kawhi Leonard today. Getting that 3-year contract extension. And the Clippers organization and Steve Ballmer letting everybody know, yeah, we're all in. We're still going for it this season. We're still in with the 2-1-3 era. I'm Adam Moslin, missing Chuck Mockler and Will Updike on this Clips and Dip live on YouTube. I'm sure it'll be in podcast form at some point, but want to give you guys some of my early thoughts here. As it is a red letter day, as my guys Petros and Money would say, with Kawhi Leonard getting that 3-year extension, and hopefully he'll be retiring a Clipper. Stark contrast to what we would have seen just 10 years ago. It's the Steve Ballmer effect. What do they say? The biggest advantage in sports is ownership. And you guys got Steve Ballmer now. What does Chuck always say before we get out? Let's go Clippers. Now it's going to be awkward as I try to stop the stream. Are you